Speaker, the Prime Minister's leadership, his behaviour drives the culture in our politics but also in our country. And it also gives licence to others to behave in a similar matter. So if he is genuine in his apology, and
he's not,
will he firstly ensure that the ministerial and members' codes have the Nolan principles incorporated into them and put them on the statute? And secondly, will he condemn those Oldham Conservative candidates who delivered toxic, racist and misogynistic leaflets during the recent local elections? His chairman has details of that.
I'd be very happy to look at those details if she'll send them to me.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very good evening. It is Sunday the 5th of June 2022. I'll say the year just to keep track. For those of you who are new to this, my name is Raj Amir. I try on most Sundays to put out some form of content, and tonight's content is really our what we fall back on. This is our Recusant 9 transmissions. We have been putting out content. We are now in our 4th year. So that's right. We are now in our 4th year and we've hit the big time. Debbie Abrahams, MP for Oldham East and Saddleworth. I make reference to her as Debbie Kashmir. I do not think that is at all racist on the basis that she seems to care more about what's happening in Pakistan, in Kashmir, than she does on the streets of Sholver or Durka, Moorside, her own constituency. That doesn't make me a racist. That doesn't make any of us a racist, but we've made it into the big time. So to understand exactly what's gone on, I will go through an accompanying letter that was signed off by both MPs, Jim McMahon and Debbie Abrahams, to the Conservatives. And I will also just take us back those 4 years from, we're into our 4th year, those 3 clear years from when I began sharing content with the people of my town. And the consequences of, if you haven't, please do like these transmissions, share, subscribe to the channel. If you can, please do buy me a coffee via the links at the top there, buymeacoffee.com/Recusant9 or paypalme.com/Recusant9. They're pinned to the top of this transmission. I am not paid by the council, and these transmissions are only possible with your support. So I'm grateful to any of you who perhaps during the course of this evening will support me in whichever way you can. Okay, let's bring up, I'll say some hellos. It's been a while, hasn't it? It feels like we've not been away, and at the same time it feels like it's been ages. Hiya Garrett, you well? Famous mate, told you I'd make you famous. Theresa, how you doing? Anita, you well? Dave, I don't think we've met, so hi, how you doing? Tony, you're making me jealous with your Helsinki photographs. Karen, good to see you. Julie, as always. And you, Denise. Dennis. How you doing, Nikki? And Sheila, oh, you are away in the lakes. Brilliant. Rachel. And Sue. Oh, you got on. Brilliant. This lady was sending me messages. She was struggling signing on, so that's great. Gary, my friend all the way over from the Midlands. And of course, Lee. Anyone else? Oh, Jack's here as well. Oh, and Lynn. Lynn. And I think that's exactly what it is. They don't like the truth. They don't like the truth. Let me bring something up. Here we go. New toys. This was his letter. Their letter. House of Commons letter-headed paper on my birthday. Oh, 21st of May 2022. I was 49 years old. On my birthday, this went out. How kind of him. Let me do that. On my birthday, how kind. We write to you today concerned about the conduct of the Conservative Party in Oldham. For a number of years now, the former CEO of the failed Collective Spirit Free School, Raja Mia, you forget my MBE, but we'll let you off, has been on a vicious campaign as he attempts to unseat Labour councillors in Oldham after the DFE and ESFA found significant financial irregularities in his school. Complete fabrication, lie. The report cleared me. Despite everything that Jim McMahon did. And those of you who remember from the time will also recall how he went to the serious fraud squad and all sorts of other stuff. But I'm not like the Pakistanis or the Bangladeshis that he chooses to hang out with because I'm not bent. And of course, campaigning to unseat Labour councillors here, there is nothing illegal in campaigning to unseat Labour councillors. This is a democracy and there's nothing at all illegal in that. Despite the fact that the campaigns that Mia involves himself in were named in the State of Hate 21 report by Hope Not Hate, I've exposed how Hope Not Hate is a Labour Party funded and Labour Party aligned organisation where its writers are all linked to the Labour Party in one way or another or funded by the Labour Party in one way or another. So just because you've created something called Hope Not Hate does not mean that it is in any way an anti-racist organisation. It's a Labour Party funded organisation as demonstrated previously. We have evidence that local Conservative activists conspired. Interesting word. How do you conspire? And campaigned with Raja Mia. How do you conspire? These are MPs, by the way, and one is a shadow minister. Conspired. Operating as a political activist under the Recusant 9 banner. It's my banner. I wear it with pride. I don't hide behind fake profiles like many of their associates do. With this racist and misogynistic campaign, to this day, no one has evidenced how in any way whatsoever that leaflet I released was racist or misogynistic. Fueled by false and highly damaging accusations that child abuse was being covered up in our town. Just hold it on that bit. It is not false that child abuse was being covered up in our town. It has been admitted by the then leader of Oldham Council that child abuse has been covered up in our town by the council and also by the police. Admitted. And not only was it admitted, the leader at the time, Arud Shah, confirmed it was still happening. And that was as a consequence of Gary Tarbuck's question at the last council meeting before the elections. He's claiming And this is the interesting bit. He's claiming it's false, that it's in exchange for block votes from the Asian community. Well, if it's not in exchange for block votes from the Asian community, why was it covered up? That's my theory, and that's my position, and I've shared it. And if that's not the case, why was it covered up? Thank you, Karen. Still going on. Yeah, that's what they said. Right. Bear with me. The coalition. I didn't know I had a coalition. That Raja Mir has brought together include former BNP activists, supporters of Britain First and the EDL. I know no one who is a former BNP activist. BNP Pete, a former Labour Party councillor now, may be a former BNP activist who drove Nick Griffin around, allegedly. But I don't know anyone who's a former BNP activist. I sure as hell don't know anyone who's a supporter of Britain First. And I think I've made it clear what my position on the EDL is. This bit is now outrageous. Those who took part in disturbances when far-right leader Tommy Robinson came to Oldham in 2017. So he's claiming that I'm aligned with not just BNP activists and supporters of the Britain First and the EDL. I'm specifically involved with individuals who took part in disturbances when far-right leader Tommy Robinson came to Oldham in 2027. This is some of those were... And then this bit, some of those who were convicted as a result of the 2001 riots. I know no one who was convicted of the 2001 riots. And now it seems Conservative Party candidates and activists. Who is or was convicted as part of the 2001 riots that are Conservative Party candidates? Gary, where were you in 2001, mate? Were you in the army? How about you, Lynn? Where were you 2001? "20 people were charged after violence erupted in Tommy Robinson's visits to Oldham." This is what he's on about. What happened was the police marched a group of Asians into Limeside. But let's have a look at some of the names and see if you can recognise whether any of these names are members of Britain First, the EDL. Haroon Hussain of Essex Street, Halifax. Hadir Ali of Olivia Terrace, Lee Street, Oldham. Mubashir Khan, 25, of Worcester Street, Oldham. Atikur Rahman, 25, of Edelman Road, Crumpsall. Faraz Ahmed, 32, of Frederick Street, Oldham. Majid Khan, 30, of Worcester Street, Oldham. Salman Ahmed, 21, of Tamworth Street, Oldham. Mohammed Zishahun Khan, 21, of Cotton Mill Crescent, Oldham. Kamran Ali, 27, of Savoy Street, Oldham. Abdul Nazir, 27, of Hardy Street, Oldham. Rahim Ahmed, 25, of Bankside Close, Oldham. Aman ul Haq, 19, of Frederick Street, Oldham. And the list goes on. According to 2 MPs, Jim McMahon and Debbie Abrahams, the coalition that Raja Mir has brought together includes former BNP activists, supporters of Britain First and the EDL, those who took part in disturbances when far-right leader Tommy Robinson came to Oldham in 2017. How about those who were charged and convicted? Does that sound like EDL to you? We now have evidence that two Conservative candidates, Gary Tarbuck, Royton South, and Lynn Kovacs, Waterhead, hand-delivered divisive leaflets. What makes them divisive? What was divisive about leaflets raising awareness of Arooj Shah's relationships with multiple dangerous convicted criminals? Secondly, those leaflets were delivered before the elections. Go and have a look on the Oldham Times when they were ranting and raving and Arooj Shah was ranting and raving. Those leaflets were delivered before the elections were announced. There's something legal about elections. They were delivered before. I know because I paid for them and I delivered them myself. The leaflet in question contains 7 references to the fact that the leader of the council, Arooj Shah, was a Muslim from Pakistani heritage. Bullshit. Complete and utter lie. Disgraceful role in the council cover-up of child abuse and the grooming and gang rape of working-class white girls from across the borough. Yes. Blocking calls by other councillors twice. This motion will be voted down and not referring it to the government if it was still got lit. Go with me on this. In her last meeting in charge of the council, before she voted down the motion the second time, Arooj Shah had sat next to Sean Fielding in a role as deputy leader whilst he claimed there were barefaced lies, voted down Brian Hobin's motion of calling in the government because they had trust in this review, which at the time they had trust in this review, nearly 2 years since that vote by Brian Hobin, we've still yet to see the review, and she was forced only as a consequence of a public question asked by Gary Tarbuck, forced to stand up and admit it was still happening today. Did you not deserve to know that our children were still being groomed and gang raped today? Because that's what she admitted to. Did you not deserve to know that? I, as a parent of a daughter in this town, want to know that so I can take the necessary safeguards to protect me and mine. Meanwhile, they'd been claiming there were barefaced lies. Now, if you're the deputy leader and then the leader of the council, as far as I'm concerned, and I believe I'm justified in this, a disgraceful role in the council's cover-up. Carry on. Robert Barnes, the Conservative candidate and now councillor in Chadderton South, who has previously published posts which includes question, why is Islam a vicious and wicked faith? Mate, he was making reference to a question time. Go and have a look at it. A question asked on question time. Do you see how this twist it? And other Islamophobic tweets alongside support for voters backing the BNP. How has Robert Barnes, a very decent man, supported voters backing the BNP? He's a Conservative candidate. He's been a Conservative candidate for multiple years. Meanwhile, McMahon's mate, Arooj Shah, Irish Imi, Tahir Mushtaq, Neil Wilby, launched a tirade of abuse on members of the public. Apparently, he distributed a leaflet which attempted to stoke community tensions by focusing on the use of a local hotel by the Home Office for asylum seekers. Well, I'm sorry. That leaflet would never have gone out in any way or form if the council had been honest from the beginning. And what was exposed was the council had not been honest and they'd been hiding it. Another Conservative activist, a newly elected councillor in Royston North. What is this phrase, activist? He's a councillor. He's a politician. Lewis Quigg became a close ally of Raja Mir by holding meetings with him during the course of the campaign. What do you mean, holding meetings with him? Where have I been holding meetings with Lewis Quigg? Have you got any evidence of that? No. You're just making things up. Attending a celebration meal with Mia and other Conservative candidates post-election. No, it was a meal because, as I announced to all of you, I thought we wouldn't get the crowdfunding and I wanted to say goodbye to people properly. And I invited people to a meeting. It had nothing to do with the election victory. It was a chance for me to meet some of you people in real life. And thank you for your support. At what point was it a celebration meal? He's a dickhead. And she's no better, whatever the equivalent phrase is. You should also be aware that there is significant concern from long-standing Conservative members that the local party has been infiltrated by members who want to maintain a toxic and divisive political culture. What? Take the fight to the Labour Party? Take the fight to the Labour Party? The town and your members, the Labour Party MPs are speaking on your behalf. The town and your members deserve a full investigation into the links between Conservative activists, candidates and councillors who are peddling mistruths and divisive content. Hold on. What is the mistruth? And if it's divisive because you've made it divisive, the pair of you, Debbie Cashmere and the samosa nibbler. Stoking up tensions in a town that is still recovering from the 2001 riots. 3 days before the election, McMahon attended a rally in Coldust exclusively with Bangladeshis. For the last 4 years, I have repeatedly demonstrated how both McMahon and Debbie Abrams have been repeatedly courting the Asian bloc vote. What a disgraceful bunch of lies written on parliamentary letter-headed paper to the chairman of the Conservative Party. So let's get to why he's done this. Because this is McMahon. Abrams has just added a signature to it. In fact, if you look at it, Abrams' signature is a screen grab. It's desperation. It's desperation because 4 years ago, and let me show you. Let me bring something else up. Four years ago, when I wrote Welcome to Oldham, this was the political landscape of Oldham. And I've just twisted, what you've seen here is Chaddington Central's changed now, but put that to one side. It'll make sense as I go along. The Tories were here. And even here, they didn't have all 6 seats. Labour had control of 1. So Saddleworth North and Saddleworth South, that's where the Tories were. Nowhere else. The Liberal Democrats were in Shaw, were in Crompton. And between them and Sam Al-Hamdani held one seat in Saddleworth, Western Lees. They had 7 councillors. Labour, all 3 in St James, all 3 in Waterhead, all 3 in Royton South, Royton North, Chadderton North, Coldhurst, Werneth, Alexandra, Medlock, Hollingwood, Chadderton South. I think Brian Hoban had just got 1, maybe, as an independent in Failsworth, and there was 1 independent in St Mary's. But that is what the landscape of the town looked like. Now, the Tories have held on to what they've got in Saddleworth. There's 1 Labour guy left. Hope, with a bit of luck, he'll be gone next time. The Lib Dems have gone from 1 seat and taken all 3 seats in Saddleworth, Western Lees. They've got 9 seats because they've got Crompton and Shaw as well. Failsworth East and Failsworth West, bar 1 seat that's left, has gone to the Failsworth Independents. Royton North, 2 of the 3 have gone to Tories, never before, unprecedented. St James, 1 has gone, 2 should have gone. If the stupid proud of lot had swallowed their pride. Unprecedented. They've got 1 in Chadderton South. In Coldhurst, there's an independent there. Never before seen. And the Labour Party still hold Royton South just. Last 2 elections, they won by 70 votes, 60 votes, 70 votes a time. A proper run-up, I think you'll take that. Waterhead, they hold. St Mary's, they hold the same as before. Although Aftab's been independent. Alexander, they hold. Medlock, there was a cartel sort of backlash and now they've re-established their control. Hollingwood, Werneth, Chadderton Central and Chadderton North. Do you see the difference? McMahon knows that this is what's coming. The Lib Dems will likely not expand more than that unless something happens, and I'll go through that in a second with you. St James, if the Conservatives play it right, they'll take all 3. Royton South, they'll take all 3. Royton North, they've got 2, they'll take all 3. Chadderton North is a new constituency. With the boundary change, the demographics look like, with a good campaign, you can take 2, if not 3. Chadderton South, where Robert won, 1 can become 2. Do you see where the Labour Party end up? They end up in Waterhead, St Mary's, Alexander, Medlock, Hollingwood, Werneth. Chadderton Central is this new strip. Do you see that thin strip there? It's new. It's around near the town hall. But coal dust, I think Montaz will hopefully hold his seat. But there's 2 Lib Dems coming, from my understanding. Lib Dems held this seat before. Do you see what happens? Contrary to the national trend, Labour will be condensed around the inner wards if I am allowed to continue. It's as simple as that. And this is what took place. We're too close to it, so you need to understand what's happened. First of all, we won in South Chadderton. They knew we were going for him. This is a Labour Party leader that we announced we were going to take her out. We made no secret about it. We were going to take her out. Three Labour Party councillors. So not only did we aspire to take out the leader of the Labour Party in Chadderton South, in South Chadderton, that ward had 3 Labour Party councillors consistently and was historically a safe seat. So we went into a Labour stronghold and gave them a slap. The wider context is Oldham is traditionally Labour. Not only did we go into a Labour Party stronghold and give them a slap, we supported a Conservative, a Tory to win. And we did it in spite of them weaponising racism, which you've seen. So we knew that people would be scared of racism and being accused of being racist, but even despite that, we won the election clean. We beat the machinery of the Labour Party, the national machinery. The national machinery of the Labour Party came into Oldham to try and protect Arud Shah. Her campaign was led by Jim McMahon MP and the Metropolitan elite, the Joshie Hermans and the Erin Lines, or whatever she's called from the Oldham Times, all of them portrayed us as far-right racists. We took on the machinery of the National Labour Party, a shadow minister, and the entire fake liberal metropolitan elite with a bunch of leaflets, and we went and stood and knocked on doors and spoke to people and told them what we thought and shared our views and opinions. And it was fronted, remember this is meant to be a racist EDL campaign, it was fronted by me, a Bangladeshi Muslim. And not only did we beat her, as Jim and Debbie Abrams know, across the country the Tories are in retreat. They're losing seats because of Boris Johnson and the scandals following him, the cost of living rise and all to do with the electorate. You know, the entire Labour Party campaign focused on the cost of living rise. And then the Partygate stuff. So that's what we did. We beat her with all of these things going against us, or we knew they were against us. And we still defeated the Labour Party. Do you see? Do you see why? Bollocks, no chance. Let me go back to Failsworth. Let me go back to the diagram. So, moving forward, the entire purpose of this letter is to try and remove me, make me toxic, a decorated anti-racist, that they've tried to put in prison for the last God knows how many years. The last case, by the way, Oliver, that Jim McMahon makes no reference to, involved Oldham Council's leader at the time, Arud Shah, going to a bent, corrupt police force that the council were working with, falsifying charges against me, dragging me through the courts for 9 months, portraying me as a criminal, and the case collapsed because the police had no evidence. Yeah. Oops. I see what I've done wrong there. Sorry, Garrett. There you go. Bleed for you. Don't mind me. I woke up at 3 in the morning to learn how to use this. Right, okay. The Labour Party strategy for my friends in Fails of Independence who watch this and pretend they don't and sit quietly and turn it on. Now you've got 5 of the 6 and you're having a little squabble between yourselves. Mate, I'm not your counsellor. You're going to stop your fireworks at night, go and phone your counsellor up. What they're going to do in Failsworth East and West, because the Labour Party still control the council and they control the district committee, is they're going to make you suffer. So if they've got a strategy to take back Failsworth East and Failsworth West, it's to punish Failsworth East and Failsworth West. So that's what they're going to do. So how do you counter it? I'll show you how you counter it. And someone put up there, Hollingwood's there for the taking. You're talking bollocks. Time after time, Hollingwood's there for the taking. I've not seen anyone take it. It's consistently delivered 3 Labour Party councillors because Hollingwood will not vote for the Conservatives. The demographic of Hollingwood will not vote for the Conservative. There's a growing number of Asian communities coming down Ashton Road into Hollingwood. And the voter, if you have a look at the voter boxes, you'll see what the majority of the votes were towards the Ashton Road end. And the further along Limeside Way didn't vote. They didn't vote. So if you want to take Hollingwood, it's who can take Hollingwood. And actually, the only people who can take Hollingwood, and it's in their interest to take Hollingwood, is for Failsworth to expand and set up a party or work in partnership with a group there. If you want to reduce the Labour Party stranglehold of the town, you can take Hollingwood. And the reason why it's in FIP's interest is because of the district committee, the district councils. And they're going to become more and more powerful. And as it stands, Failsworth East and Failsworth West are not just included with Hollingwood. As it stands, Labour, but it's also included with Medlock Vale. So they've lost. So they're just going to get hammered. The only way anyone is going to take Hollingwood is by Failsworth Independence expanding this way. Moving that way. And that would give them 9 seats. Labour would be left with 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 17 seats. There'll be 2 independents, one in St Mary's, one in Coldest. The Lib Dems would have 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. And the Conservatives, if they played it right, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. And the 21 Conservatives, if they did a partnership with the Failsworth Independence and Hollingwood with some genuine delegated powers, it's all over. It's as simple as that. And that is why this man and this woman are fuming. Because they've seen what I've done. Which is take the complex and the complicated and make them into bite-sized, simple chunks. And what we've done over the last 4 years is we've mobilized and informed this lot here. And the Conservatives in Oldham. And the Conservatives here in Saddleworth and the Conservatives in Saddleworth North and South hate me because they have lost control of their party. Because people in working class neighbourhoods are starting to vote Conservative. And yes, Gary, it's either that, but in my honest opinion, the infrastructure, there's no one in, you can't just create infrastructure out of nowhere. No one's going to create that for you out of nowhere. And it's in FIP's interest, it's in FIP's interest to do that. Because what does Failsworth Independence mean? Surely it means delegated budgets. Surely it means controlling your own equivalent of a parish council, but with genuine bite and power, deciding which houses are built, where the money's spent, your own ring-fenced council taxes spent in your own area. Even your own township, because these are townships. You go back to a township model. Sorry, I'm sure there's a quicker way of deleting all of this, but I don't have a clue. So give me a second. So what you'd do is you'd create a series of townships. Delegated powers, delegated budgets. All of you who've been watching me for however long have seen me going about it. That's one township. Chadderton becomes a township. You can see it's a natural township. Werner, Medlock, Alexander. Sean Crompton. You'd probably go there. So the areas around the town centre. It's really straightforward. Delegated powers, delegated budgets. You create a series of townships. And you move to, and what that allows you to do, you've got now this nonsense of £100 million being invested, wasted, in trying to prop up Oldham town centre. Actually, what you end up doing is you're creating clusters of town centres. Shaw will get money. Royton will get money. Do you see? Saddleworth will have investment. Failsworth will have investment. Chadderton, the town centre's knackered. Do you see? You get investment. Lees will get investment. And you end up with the money spread and the resources spread. You'd not get the demographics. We won't get the numbers because they're not populated enough, Gary. I never had any crayons at school, I'm afraid, mate. So that's why he's angry. And that's why he's wrote that letter. Do you see? It's because they're losing control. They're losing control. Speaking of warm Vimto, I'll go and top up my Vimto. If you want to, Please like, share, subscribe if you haven't. I've only got 30 likes and 112 people watching at my end. So that's interesting. And I'll be back in a moment. Oh, and by all means, buy me a coffee. It's no problem, mate. No problem whatsoever. Right. So McMahon claimed we're the racists, yeah? And we've run some sort of dodgy campaign. Yeah, that's what he did in his letter. Yep. The only person this country where a High Court judge has thrown out an election result was in Oldham East and Saddleworth. And it was a Labour Party MP, Phil Willis. So the only people who've got form in what McMahon is accusing us of is the Labour Party. This is from before the court case, but he lost the court case and he got thrown out. And we got Debbie Abrams, and I'll get to that in a moment. But it was the former immigration minister. He tried to foment racial and religious divisions as part of a desperate attempt to change an election result. A specially convened election court was told that Labour MP Willis and his campaign team set out to galvanise the white Sun vote against Liberal Democrat candidate Elwyn Watkins. They decided to set out to make the white folk angry by depicting an alleged campaign by Muslims to take Phil out. In a high-risk strategy described in their own words as shit or bust. Watkins mounted a rare legal challenge. He'd lost by just 103 votes. 2 High Court judges were considering the case. Watkins won, by the way. He was also said to be worried, so this is Phil Willis, that a Conservative Asian candidate, Kashif Ali, would mean Tory voters switching to the Lib Dems. Do you know what that means? It means that the Tory voters would see a Pakistani as their candidate and would switch sides and vote for the white guy, the Lib Dem, instead. Now who's the racist? Willis and his team were playing for high stakes, came up with a strategy to deal with the perceived Liberal Democrat threat, which they themselves described as risky. They set out to attack Mr. Watkins personally and say whatever it took to turn the electorate against him. Willis claimed, that the Asians wanted to take him out and Watkins was in league with the Asians. This was intended to galvanise the white sun-reading vote against him. This was done, this is the Labour Party, by the way, not me, this is the Labour Party proven to have done this in Oldham. This was done by painting a picture of Muslim extremists or mad Muslims looking to damn Willis. His team, so this is Willis's team, also said Watkins had made policy statements to woo and pander to people they described as fanatics and militants. So Labour described these people as fanatics and militants, the Muslims, in this town. They falsely suggested that Mr. Watkins took this craven stance to the point of refusing to condemn death threats. Mr. Willis made these false statements as part of a series of reckless and irresponsible steps in his campaign, using doctored photographs, misrepresenting facts, stooping even to fomenting racial division and tension. Willis didn't do that on his own. He was the Labour Party candidate. Misrepresentation of People's Act. Willis lost. And then the Labour Party brought in Debbie Abrahams. Now, throughout this, it makes reference to Willis and his team. And I'll bring the date up so you see it at the top. Wednesday, 15th of September 2010, Willis and his team. My brother Jamal, would you liking to share, please? Who was the leader of the Labour group in 2010? Come now, my brother Jamal. Were the samosas tasty in 2010? Yeah. Ask him. Ask him. See if he confirms it. He was the leader of the Labour Party in Oldham in 2010. These tactics that they're accusing us of, that we haven't engaged in, we will not engage in, because it's divisive, and that's not where we're coming from. We want to build a better town for everyone. These tactics are the tactics of the Labour Party. These racist tactics are the tactics of Debbie Abraham's predecessor. The only reason she is standing in Parliament making those allegations is because she was planted in Oldham to continue the racially divisive politics in this town by McMahon and his Labour Party associates. Abraham has no history in Oldham. Riaz stood as a candidate. Abdul Jabbar stood as a candidate. They did it on purpose. They split the Asian vote so the white person could go through the middle. Ask Jabbar if I'm lying. The racial divide and rule tactics in this town has one home and one home only, and that is in McMahon's samosa nibbling vote bank in the Muslim community where the Labour Party control the block vote. If you're finding value in this transmission, please like, please share, please consider financially supporting me so I can continue with these transmissions and maybe try and do more than one a month. So McMahon, in that letter, falsely raised the spectre of far-right extremism. You saw that. Former BNP activists, whatever it was, EDL members, Britain First. Some disturbance in Limeside, where he falsely portrayed it as a far-right thing. You can see that clearly from that letter. You saw that. There is something very worrying going on in our country. Were we creating a false or overinflated perception of white working class racism? Where you are the far right activists and you will shut your gob, otherwise they'll come and jump on you like they've been jumping on me non-stop for the last how many years. And I'm not making this up. Because the government has just confirmed it. There's a government counter-terrorism scheme called Prevent. Those of you who watched my samosas on Sunday, and I very much enjoyed the samosas on Sunday. They're a lot shorter, aren't they? But I very much enjoyed the samosas on Sunday. Those of you who watched my samosas on Sunday will have seen my concerns to do with the terrorism issues and the UK's Prevent strategy. Well, this is the government's advisor, this lady, Sarah Khan. Sarah Khan has come out and said, and this is amid leaks. So I shared some of those leaks last week or the week before. The UK Prevent scheme should be ideologically blind, says advisor. And let's go through this. The counter-terrorism Prevent programme, which has been dogged by claims of being a cover to spy on Muslim communities, should be ideologically blind, a government advisor has said. So apparently, the purpose of the Prevent programme. And Prevent we established, by the way, it was a Labour Party government that introduced Prevent. It was post the 7/7 bombings. We did some work beforehand, but we knew we needed to do something immediately after the bombings, and we introduced Prevent. And I say we because I was working on it at the time. The strategy is currently the subject of a review by Sir William Shawcross, and leaks suggest it will conclude that Prevent has been too focused on right-wing extremism in recent years. So they've overinflated white racism for political correctness, for community relations, for all the same reasons they hid the grooming and gang rape of working class white girls. They're now what's the term I'm looking for? They're now misusing resources and creating this exaggerated right-wing extremism in the country when all of the evidence suggests the need to renew the focus on Islamist extremism. Accusations that the findings are politically motivated. So apparently this guy's findings are now politically motivated because he said something that is unpalatable to those who've weaponized race. She's a dame now. So Sarah Khan's gone up in the world. Dame Sarah Khan, a campaigner who has been accused in the past of being a mouthpiece for the Home Office. She's took some shit, this lady. Said the UK's counter-terrorism strategy, which is separate from the countering terrorism scheme including Prevent, was completely outdated. It's no longer fit for purpose. That's because they're using it in the wrong places with the wrong people. Instead of going where the evidence says the risk is, they're going where it's politically correct to spend the money. So what do you think is going to happen? Remember Salman Abedi was on the watch list and then disappeared because there wasn't enough resources? Sikh says, good policy has to be ideologically blind. That means it can't be swayed by political convenience. There's far-right Islamist Sikh, there's Hindu nationalism, there's all different types of extremism. There's far-left, for example. You've got to deal with all of those types of problems, and only trying to focus on one at the expense of others is totally counterproductive. They've basically gone after the politically correct one, which is you white people. You filthy white racists. I'm not sure what or how or what evidence, but it's easy to call white people racist. So they've got used the government's counter-terrorism Prevent program, which is meant to safeguard all of us, to go and find some white racists. Does it remind you of the Greater Manchester police officers? 97 predominantly Pakistani and Bangladeshi paedophiles, child sex offenders. And the police were told to go and find some white ones instead. I'm not making this up. It's in Operation Augusta. So they're doing that with our counter-terrorism strategy. Last year was the first time the number of referrals to Prevent relating to far-right extremism exceeded those for Islamist radicalisation. And then when you looked at the stats, there were lots of fake and false people just using them to try and get people into programs. And this is the bit which I genuinely like. Forget the word prevent. It's a space I occupy with you lot. Because what I talk about and how I engage with you, I think gives you, me, all of us hope. That you're not racist, you're not extremist, because someone who isn't from that persuasion is not just agreeing with you, but taking you on a journey so you understand these issues in a far more complex way, so you don't buy into the oversimplified narrative, because the oversimplified narrative is what the extremists always present. In essence, they left a vacuum which Islamists stepped into. I've not left a vacuum. I've filled that vacuum, which has prevented the far right stepping into it in this town. I think having that engagement, continuing to engage with communities, explaining what the program is, addressing concerns, I think that's got to continue in a much better way than we've seen previously. That's what we're doing. It's clear that there was genuine hatred against Muslims in the UK, but that Islamist extremists had exploited Islamophobia. Of course they had. And remember, Oldham Academy North, the council issued a statement apologising because some Muslim boys had decided they were going to pray outside in the rain. Because in towns like Oldham, it's not discrimination against the Muslims in the workplace and so forth that's the issue. The issue is that there is the oversensitivity to a certain demographics for fear of being accused racist and the weaponising of race by those who rely on those communities for the block vote that keeps them in power. And the ending point, what they're trying to do is actually silent dissent. Is that why I was arrested, Greater Manchester Police? Trying to silent dissent? Operation Hexagon? Actually creating a climate of censorship and fear. Do you see the parallels? Do you see the parallels? Now, if you'd done this, if you had said this, if I'd said this, there'd be outrage. We'd be called racists. This is from the Telegraph. It was Keir Starmer going on about the Queen's Jubilee. Remember, he wanted to abolish the monarchy. But he's since had a change of heart, worried about the votes, I would imagine. Watching last year's Euro 2020 tournament, it was striking not just how many of the home nation's players were first, second or third generation immigrants, but how many of those wearing replica shirts in the stands of the pubs were as well. There's no such thing as a second generation immigrant because immigration status isn't passed to the child or the grandchild. That is an outright racist statement by the leader of the Labour Party. Now, yes, I'm picking on it, but what I'm doing is demonstrating to you how they can say things that are outright racist, because what they're saying there is that I belong less because my father was an immigrant and my daughter belongs less because she would be classed as a third generation immigrant. Just figure that one out. This is the Labour Party. They want to keep the minorities identified as minorities in some way or another. It's an outright racist, and it's not racist as in he said it. He believes it. He doesn't even realise he's racist. He doesn't even realise he's racist. Second generation immigrant, third generation immigrant. What's that? If you were a slave, does that make your child automatically, the stock of the slave owner? If you're a criminal, is your child automatically inherit that status? It's inbuilt into them. The weaponizing of race is inbuilt in the Labour Party. At the detriment of not just you, but at the detriment of every minority community in this country as well. Which is why they've come up with this shit. Racism in English education should be seen as a safeguarding issue, says author. How about not having girls sexually assaulted in this classroom? Let's just start with that stuff, rather than shouty words. So Geoffrey Bouquet argues in his new book that schools are unsafe places for students marginalised by race. And by the way, this is in The Guardian. This isn't in some obscure publication. He's a black English teacher, author and broadcaster. He argues that schools are unsafe places for students marginalised by race and warns that black children are attending institutions that might actively contribute to their harm. He says issues of social justice, including racism, should be taken as a key performance indicator in school. Racism is something that needs to be seen and acknowledged before it is understood. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And once understood, it can be tackled. In this country, too many people don't even know what it looks like. Thank you, Nick. See? You play that through, yeah? The book, which will be published this month by Picador, comes months after the chase of Child Q, a black 15-year-old girl who was strip searched by police officers while at a school in London after teachers claimed they smelled cannabis, sparking widespread outrage. That was not at all to do with anything that he's trying to make reference to. I don't think any one of you would find it acceptable that a 15-year-old girl, a child, is being strip searched by male police officers or in the presence of male police officers. I don't think a single, and whilst they were menstruating as well, I don't think a single one of us would find that acceptable. I find it horrific and traumatizing. I understand this young girl and her family are suing the police and the school. And good luck to them. I hope they take them to the cleaners. I think every one of you would agree with me on that. I would argue that racism is a safeguarding issue, he writes in his book. Remember, children, racism, safeguarding issue in our town. In our town, the victims have been systematically white working class girls who've been groomed and gang raped from school gates, and all of it was covered up. Where's the book on that? Where's the book on safeguarding on that? What is the school's anti-racist policy? In the book, Bouquet cites a Guardian investigation last year that revealed more than 60,000 racist incidents were recorded in UK schools over a 5-year period. You know what that shows to me? That our system isn't working. It doesn't mean do more of the same. Anti-racism as a policy has comprehensively failed, and our existing policies to multiculturalism has systematically failed. And the question you asked, Gary, earlier, about your children, if we continue as is, and it's one of the reasons why I do this, for whoever listens to me, if we continue as is, we're going to get into an even worse mess than we are currently in. It's madness. Doing more of the same thing to address a problem that's already getting worse will just amplify how much more worse it becomes. It won't make it better. And here we have it. Bouquet, who now delivers training, talks and consultancy on issues around race, anti-racism and curriculum designs to schools, as well as co-presenting BBC Radio 4's something or another. He wants to decolonise the curriculum in England. Decolonisation is not simply a case of better representation and increased diversity, he writes. Those things are a start, absolutely. But to decolonise the curriculum is to recognise that it exists as part of a system that is rooted in racist soil. Only then can we begin to uproot and plant something better. White privilege, that's you folk, most of you here, I think, is part of a wider ideology of white supremacy. You're not just white and privileged, you belong to a group of white supremacists, including you, vegetarian Julie Hayward. You're a white supremacist. Constructed long before any of us were born. That means it's ingrained into you. You've got to acknowledge it. I've spent my entire adult life working with children and young people in a professional capacity in some of the most challenging working class white communities in this country, all across this country. I've never been asked to justify my role by a child. Are you really a teacher? Are you really such and such a body? Never. No one's ever asked me that. No one's ever asked me if I can cook a curry or if I can drive a taxi, which I suppose is the equivalent of can you rap? And have you been to prison? Do I know a terrorist? Nah. It's bullshit. Just absolute bullshit. But this bullshit forms the bedrock of the Labour Party's philosophy on anti-racism, which led to what I shared earlier today. And that's this Labour Party quote. It was part of the manifesto. So this is part of the pledge that Jim McMahon and Debbie Abrahams won their election on. So if they got into power, this is what they pledged to do. There's no ambiguity here. This is what Jim McMahon and Debbie Abrahams pledged to do. In recognition of the past wrongdoings of the British state, the new constitution should make an unreserved apology to all of the countries of the world that the empire invaded and negatively impacted. So they mean the United Kingdom should make an unreserved apology to all parts of the world where it had the British Empire. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all across Africa, the Caribbean, yeah, everywhere. But it doesn't stop there. In addition, the British state should set up a reparations fund as part of the constitution, which offers financial assistance to communities across the world that can show loss and detriment as a result of the actions of the British state. Your grandparents and your great-grandparents, as children, were working class people in this country, some of the worst living conditions in the world. Children were working in factories from the age of 7, 8, 9, doing some of the most dangerous jobs. But if you object, you're one of the racists and the white privilege and the white supremacists that this fake liberal metropolitan elite with Keir Starmer, Matt Mahon, all of them, got a chocolate piece melting. Give me a second. You've been to my house, I haven't been to my flat yet, Gary. So you've seen my blue board and it's set up like a classroom, and I did it during COVID because my daughter's mother, she's was one of those NHS doctors, so she was working throughout, so I had the joys of trying to homeschool my daughter. And we have a very different relationship, so from, I think she was 5 at the time, she'd only started reception, or up to just when they went back last September. I think they went back properly. It was the shaking of her head, and she was adamant that I was only good for Lego and making her breakfast. Didn't believe I might have once educated people. So good luck with that. Exactly, Kel. But there's no acknowledgement, is there? Do you see the hypocrisy and the double standards? The recognition of a historical injustice done to one group by a wealthy elite, whilst ignoring the historical injustice done to another group by the same wealthy elite. And it just layers and layers and layers. And that's why we are, or it's one of the reasons why we're in the mess we're in. If you're finding value, please like. I've got 41 likes. I'm doing all right. I've got 41 likes. No one's bought me a coffee. That's all right. And 160 people are watching. He At least you've signed up, mate. You signed up last week, didn't you? You signed up to the webpage. I think you've signed up on the £3 plan, which is brilliant. You know, I put it up when because some people said they want, you know, they can afford more, so I put it up to £10 for those who could, and some people have chosen that. Most people have stayed on the £5, but a few new people like you have come along for the £3 one, which is brilliant. You know, my at the end of the day, mate, I'll keep going for as long as I can keep going. Ready? Here's a strange one, this Jack Fifield. He doesn't like me giving it him back. Went running to Facebook complaining. He was sharing, it's right, it wasn't Anita, because Anita shared it with me. He was sharing on Twitter how he'd caught an STD. And he's your community reporter, by the way. I wouldn't want him at any community event that my daughter was at, or my nephews and nieces were at. But I suppose he comes from a different generation where they overshare those things of how he slept with 3 people. 3 people, I think it was. And he needed to tell them that he had an STD. And he was sharing all of this on Twitter. Anyway, Amanda Chadderton is Oldham Council's first openly gay council leader after a bit of prodding by us. I prodded her because I knew and had been told that the Labour Party were worried that her sexuality would cost them votes in the traditional Muslim communities. And I'm already hearing that in places where Jim McMahon was invited, Amanda Chadderton is not invited. Now, if you were my friend and someone said, you can come, Raj, but your mate Gary can't come, I'd say, well, get stuffed, I'm not coming either. But hey, that's the sort of bloke I am. Not McMahon, who needs the block votes in the mosques and all of that. So Amanda Chadderton, first openly gay. And the council are now funding Pride. The council agreed to help fund the annual event. Louis Hamblett is that strange councillor who liked to talk about, was it the beavers or the otters or something? Revealed some details of the upcoming event. July the 22nd, Sunday the 24th. Queer Cabaret is planned to mark the beginning of Oldham Pride. Held at Oldham Coliseum, the cabaret will star Oldham drag queen Terry Fox, who is also the landlady at blah blah blah, the George Tavern. Other drag artists, so it's a drag set. So the council are funding something for gay pride. Now I have, and whilst I don't talk about my own sexuality for reasons of not allowing the Islamists to win, I have friends, family, for a long, long time who are members of the lay, the gay, lesbian, bisexual, the LGBT plus community. They are doctors, they are teachers, they are policemen, they are nurses. They work across all sections of society. And yet in Oldham, the council is funding something that portrays the gay community in a very specific, narrow and judgmental way as transvestites and drag artists. And Louis Hamlet is up for this. It's the equivalent. It's worse. Of engaging with the black community by putting on some rap event and having jerk chicken on. And playing some dominoes in the corner. Red stripe. And red stripe. This is scandalous. This is absolutely scandalous. And it gets worse. On the Sunday, they're having a pink picnic at Alexander Park. Why call it a pink picnic? Apparently, it's a family-orientated picnic to celebrate LGBT plus communities without any acts at Alexander Park. I would attend a picnic and I'd take my daughter and I'm sure my brother would go because he does a gay pride with his wife and stuff in Liverpool every year where he works. I'm not attending a pink picnic where you're trivializing the LGBT plus community and you're stereotyping in a very negative way. And I'm sorry. Who in their right mind would feel safe attending an LGBT plus event in Alexander Park? Where Amanda Chadderton, the leader of Oldham Council, is not welcoming the Glodic community yards away. Oh, have I got that wrong, Amanda? Your council funds the Pakistani Community Centre, doesn't it, Amanda? I've seen Debbie Abrahams at events at the Pakistani Community Centre. Arud Shah, Mushtaq, all of your mates, your councillor mates. Why aren't you at an event at the Pakistani Community Centre? You're happy to call us racist, but you won't deal with homophobia in your core vote communities. Hypocrisy. Organiser Louis said, this is Hamlet, I would imagine, the councillor, sometimes parents don't want to come to Pride, as it might not be the right setting for their children. But they'd like to come to more family-orientated things. Yeah. We don't have gay people in my community, Karen, in terms of the Muslim community in Oldham. Because admitting you're gay gives open season for the Islamists to kill you. Have a look to see what they're doing in places like Iran. I think they're still hanging gay men. Many of the gay Muslims I know from my own community leave home and go away. Just it's no different than what in many ways happened in the 70s and 80s with my white friends who are gay or were gay at the time, and they had to move. But there you go. Maybe one day they'll get one of these things right. One more thing for you. Spindle's Town Square Shopping Centre redevelopment plans set to be approved. Olivia Bridge, apparently the digital reporter for the Oldham Times. Blueprints which promise new spaces for business and leisure have been recommended to be given the green light by the Council's Planning Committee on Wednesday. The plans include demolishing the former TJ Hughes shop to make way for a new market hall that no one has asked for and no one wanted. They just decided they were going to move the market there. And above the market hall will be a new event space with a rooftop terrace operating from 9 a.m. until midnight if the plans are given the green light. Again, no business case, none of that. They've just made it up because it's your money. £100 million or so it's now, Spindles is now on a trajectory of, by the way. High quality office with contemporary facilities and co-working spaces to encourage entrepreneurs and businesses will also be built above the new market under the proposals. All of the co-working spaces in Manchester have had to slash their rents because of COVID. So if if they're not filling them up in the city centre, meanwhile, the existing mall and car park will be transformed to make way for a museum, archive and library for the public. So they just want to try and copy what Rochdale have done, but we'll do it in a clumsy, crappy way when it won't make any sense. Complete with a search room and reading room. They've bought a shopping centre and are changing the mall and car park will be transformed to make way for a museum, archive and library for the public, complete with a search room and reading room. The shopping centre itself is set to be extended into Parliament Square and it include a food court and retail market. Tommyfield Market, which the council notes is historically and culturally significant due to being one of the largest indoor markets in the northwest, will also move to the new centre under the plans. So it doesn't matter about its historic and cultural significance. You're going to knock it down and get rid of it and force move them and those who can afford to move into your redeveloped plans. And make the existing Tommyfield Market site a park. A park. There's been no consultation done in the park, no feasibility study to say it was needed or it's wanted. They've just made it up. The council said the shopping centre will remain open to the public throughout the construction. Like it'll make any difference if it's shut. Which they hope to have completed by the end of 2023. Anyone for a wager? Anyone for a wager? Recommending the plans to be approved, a report ahead of the meeting states the proposals will enhance the viability and vitality of Oldham Town Centre by encouraging additional footfall and stimulating the night-time economy. So they reckon, I'm going back and reading this and making sense of it, that by building a library, is it a library? Not a library, what was it? Some co-working space that they've got no idea whether people will go for. And actually the vast majority of people in the private sector and the public sector prefer to work from home, by the way. You've seen the challenges that some of the bigger firms are having in trying to get people to go back full-time into offices. Never mind pay rent to go and work in co-working spaces. High-quality offices, my ass. Entrepreneurs and businesses, right? They reckon there'll be footfall from that. They reckon the museum, it's a museum, an archive library, will give you lots of footfall, and some bar with a rooftop terrace. Let's make it a shisha bar if it's got a rooftop terrace. And they'll have it done by 2023. And the park. And all of that is going to give you loads of footfall. What they omit, and I like these phrases, you know, these paragraphs, because it's great, because it's just bullshit jargon. The significant changes in retail demand which have occurred since the local plan was adopted, with the projected impact on footfall, have created a necessity to consider diversification of the shopping centre to ensure we maintain a healthy and vibrant town centre whilst reducing the existing level of vacancies. So what they are going to do, and what that's code for, how do you reduce the existing level of vacancies? You have a 5-star fit out for Dirty Harry Caffrell and his team of council officers who will move from the Civic Centre into a redeveloped Spindles, where that will become the new Civic Centre, the new council bases. A 5-star fit out costing 50 odd million pounds of your money so they can have fancy new offices. And all of that is omitted in this article. The main reason the council bought Spindles was to move people out of the Civic Centre so they could then demolish the Civic Centre and build houses for the coal dust overspill. At the time, Sean Fielding claimed about the houses that were being built that he reckoned people who would otherwise consider Saddleworth would consider living in coal dust overspill, wedged near the bus station between Coldust and St Mary's. This town is run by a bunch of loons. There have been no objections made to the plans, which will be debated by councillors at the committee meeting. Apparently, there are clear economic, social and environmental benefits identified. I'm not sure. I've not seen a single economic, social or environmental benefit that they've described. Weigh in favour of the proposed realignment of uses to assist with the town centre's regeneration and future prosperity. If you want to stop this madness, if we want to stop this madness, we go back to where we started this evening. And it's why McMahon and Debbie Abrahams are desperate to close me down. We have to beat them at the ballot box and take control of this town. £100 million, best part of £100 million, and you know it's going to go over. You know it's going to go over like it always goes over. What should have happened is we should never have bought the bloody place in the first place. We should have spent a few £1,000,000. Remember, it's £100 million they're spending. A few £1,000,000 would have made a state-of-the-art outdoor Tommy Field market. State-of-the-art. Rebranded, historically brought up to scratch. It would look amazing. Subsidised rents. All of that. It would have been amazing. But they want the land to build houses on. They want the land around there. And they've got some stupid park idea. A linear park, which is a strip of grass. In Oldham means a strip of mud. An archive library. But it's all right. He'll have a reading room. He'll have a reading room. And Amanda Chadderton, in her opening statement, has made reference to fulfilling and seeing through these big regeneration projects. Well, this one's not going to be seen through, is it? Before the next election. Because you've already said it's 2023. The end of. So which regeneration projects, Amanda Chadderton, will be seen through before then? Speaking of Amanda Chadderton, put aside her voting through a pay rise that her and her mates did, which, by the way, so far, Lewis Quigg, Bobby Barnes, Dave Arnott, Beth Sharp, so all four Oldham Conservatives. Mark Wilkinson, I understand. I also understand another of the Failsworth Independents has given it up and will be donating it to charity. Please, my apologies, I'm not sure which one it is. And Montaz. That's it. All the others are taking their pay rises and putting it in their pockets. And some of you have got in touch with me and said it doesn't matter. It's only a couple of quid here and there. You misunderstand, or you missed a point. It does matter. Because when it comes down to it, this was the first opportunity that our councillors had to align themselves with those who have been adversely affected by the economic hardships in society around them. This was the first chance for them to demonstrate that the rhetoric they were spouting for political gain, they actually believed in themselves. And it was an opportunity through which they could demonstrate that they stood alongside these people. And for some of them, the pay rise was nothing more than £15 or £20 a month. For the likes of Amanda Chadderton, it was substantially more. But they'd rather put that £15 a month in their pockets than gesture, and it is a gesture, but it's symbolic, symbolically say, no, we stand alongside our people who are adversely affected. And the majority of councillors in this town refused. That's what we're up against. And Amanda Chadderton, Amanda, how did your meeting with Jim McMahon go to discuss how you're going to deal with me? Oh, I know all about your meeting with Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon clearly is running out of human shields, because Amanda Chadderton wasn't his first choice. Shahid Mushtaq was his first choice. But clearly Amanda Chadderton will now find herself not just council leader, but mysteriously appearing on various national platforms representing the Labour Party. I won't call it a bribe. I'll let the people of South Chadderton, Royton South decide come May next year. I think if they had their way, mate, they'd put me in prison. Thank you very, very much. Oh, it's 11 o'clock, so thank you very, very much. This was a Recusant 9 transmission. I can't afford to do too many of these, I'm afraid, so I'm thinking maybe one a month at a push, and we'll get to the election, and we'll try our best to get there. So I'll see what I do next week. It might be an article or a samosa on Sunday or something, but I'll try my best. But thank you very, very much to the, let me bring it up, 173 of you who joined me this evening. I'm grateful for your company and that you've taken time out on a Sunday night to listen to me go on with myself. Joshy Herman from the mill we'll get to next time perhaps. Was keen to claim that my viewing figures at times are extremely low. And then he shared his article and promoted his article. And I think when I last looked at it, something like 3 likes on it. I'm going to keep doing what I can for as long as I can. A very, very good night to all of you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.